The rain had been pounding the sidewalks for hours, cold, relentless, almost angry. And somewhere beneath the flickering streetlight behind Miller's grocery, a 12-year-old homeless boy named Evan sat curled beneath a rusted metal awning, clutching a thin blanket that did nothing to stop the chill drilling into his bones. He was shivering, hungry, exhausted, but none of that compared to the moment that was about to change his life forever. Because tonight, by accident, by fate, by pure dumb luck, Evan would save the wrong person, at the right time, in the most dangerous way possible. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from right now. Drop your country or city in the comments below. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button, because this story is going to take you somewhere you never expected. Now, let's get back to Evan. He pulled the blanket over his head, trying to block out the wind slicing through the alley like knives. It wasn't supposed to be this cold, not this early in the year. But Evan had learned a long time ago that the weather didn't care about him, hunger didn't care about him, and people, most people, didn't care either. Some walked past him pretending he didn't exist. Others crossed the street, clutching their belongings a little tighter. A few tossed him coins without even looking, as if feeding a stray animal. He was invisible, or at least that's what he thought. Because just as Evan closed his eyes, trying to imagine himself somewhere warm, dry, safe, a sound cut through the night. A scream. Sharp. High. Panic-filled. Evan's head jerked up, eyes wide. Then it came again, closer this time, echoing down the narrow alleyway. A woman. Desperate. Terrified. Evan sat frozen for a moment. He'd heard fights before. Arguments. Shouts. This wasn't that. This was someone begging, not for help, but for mercy. Another sound joined it. A deep male voice, low and threatening. Evan didn't think. He just ran. Bare feet slapping on cold, wet pavement as he sprinted through the darkness, weaving between dumpsters, puddles, and broken bottles. The rain hammered down harder, drenching his hair, stinging his eyes, but he pushed through it. The screams grew louder. When he rounded the corner, he saw her. A woman, maybe mid-30s, soaked from the rain, clutching her stomach like she was in pain. Her breath came in short gasps. Her hands trembled. And blocking her escape was a tall man with his hood pulled low, shoulders tense, voice sharp with anger. Evan froze. The man barked something at her. Evan couldn't hear the words over the storm, but he heard the fear in her voice when she tried to respond. She stumbled backward, legs shaking, then collapsed to her knees. Please, I can't. The hooded man stepped forward. And that was it. Evan's body moved before his fear could stop it. He ran straight toward them, heart pounding so hard he could hear it echo in his ears. Itchy why? He shouted, voice cracking. Leave her alone. The man whipped around, surprised. Evan stood there, tiny, trembling, drenched, barefoot, but refusing to back away. Get lost, kid, the man snapped. But Evan didn't move. The woman lifted her hand weakly toward him, like she was reaching for a lifeline. Help me, she whispered. And everything inside Evan tightened, like the world was pushing him forward even though every instinct screamed at him to run. He stepped in front of her, spreading his arms as if he could shield her with his small, shaking body. Stop, Evan said, voice barely above a whisper. She needs help. The hooded man stared at him in disbelief, then took a step forward. Evan braced himself. He didn't know what was about to happen. Didn't know if the man would shove him aside. Didn't know if he was making the biggest mistake of his life. But he stood his ground. Because somebody had to. And then, everything changed. The alley lit up with a sudden burst of white light, brighter than a car, louder than any normal engine, and a low rumbling growl filled the space. A motorcycle turned into the alley. Not just any motorcycle. A massive, chrome-heavy beast with exhaust pipes glowing against the rain and handlebars as wide as a doorway. And sitting on top of it, staring straight at the three of them, was a man wearing a leather vest. A vest with a patch. A patch everyone knew. Hell's Angels. The hooded man froze. Evan froze. Even the woman stopped crying for a moment. The biker stopped the motorcycle halfway down the alley, engine rumbling like thunder before he finally killed it. Silence. The hooded man took one look at the approaching figure and ran, vanished into the darkness without a word. The biker didn't chase him. Didn't need to. He rushed straight to the woman instead. "Lena," he said, voice cracking. "Baby, what happened? Are you hurt?" Evan blinked. Lena. He knew that name. He'd heard it shouted once from across the street when a group of bikers gathered outside the auto shop. This wasn't just a woman. This was his wife. The biker dropped to his knees beside her, lifting her gently, brushing the wet hair from her face, checking her pulse with trembling fingers. She tried to speak. Her voice broke. "Miguel." I fell, and then someone grabbed. Miguel's jaw locked. Lightning flashed overhead, illuminating the fury in his eyes. The kind of rage that didn't shout or scream, but promised consequences. Then his gaze snapped toward Evan. The boy froze. Because being looked at by a Hell's Angel wasn't like being looked at by a normal man. It was like standing in front of a storm. A dangerous one. Miguel stepped forward, towering over him. "You," he said quietly. "You helped her?" Evan swallowed. "I tried." Miguel stared at him for a long, terrifying moment. Then something softened. He put his huge hand on Evan's shoulder. Heavy, warm, surprising. "What's your name, kid?" "E. Evan." Miguel nodded slowly, like committing it to memory. "You saved my wife tonight." Evan shook his head. "I just—" Miguel cut him off. "No, you did." He lifted Lena in his arms effortlessly and walked toward his bike, but just before he mounted it, he turned back toward the boy. "Stay right here," he said. "I'm coming back for you." And then he was gone. Engine roaring, taillight disappearing into the rain. Evan stood there, soaked, shaking, confused. People never came back for him. But tonight, someone would. And tomorrow morning, the world he knew would be gone forever. Evan stood in that alley long after the roar of the motorcycle faded. Rain slid down his face, dripping from his chin, washing streaks of dirt from his cheeks. He didn't know why he wasn't running. He didn't know why he wasn't hiding. All he knew was that the biker, Miguel, told him to stay. And for some reason, Evan listened. Maybe it was the way the man said it. Not as a threat, not as an order, but as if Evan mattered. As if Evan existing in that moment meant something. That was new. The streetlight buzzed overhead, flickering in and out. The wind howled down the alley, carrying the cold into Evan's bones. His legs shook beneath him, not just from the cold, but from everything that had happened. He replayed it in his mind. The scream, the man, Lena collapsing, standing between them even though he was terrified, and then Miguel showing up like a living storm. Evan looked down at his hands. They trembled violently. "Why did you do that?" he whispered to himself. He didn't know. Or maybe he did. Because a long time ago, Evan had watched someone suffer, someone he loved more than anything, and he couldn't help them, couldn't save them. And since then, he had promised himself that if he ever saw someone in trouble again, he wouldn't run. Not ever. But now that the danger had passed, his stomach twisted with fear. What if the man came back? What if Miguel blamed him for something? What if this was all a mistake? He turned toward the street, half thinking about disappearing into the night like he always did. And that's when he heard it. A familiar sound. The deep, thunderous growl of a motorcycle engine turning the corner. Evan's chest tightened. Then he saw the headlight appear through the rain. Miguel was back, and he wasn't alone. The large bike rolled to a slow stop in front of the boy, water splashing beneath the tires. Miguel swung off the seat, boots hitting the pavement with a heavy thud. He walked straight toward Evan. The boy's instinct was to shrink back, but he forced himself to stay still. Miguel stopped in front of him, towering over him the same way before, but this time, his expression wasn't hard. It was worried. "Kid," Miguel said, breath heavy. "How long you been out here?" Evan froze. The question hit him like a punch. I don't know," he muttered. Miguel studied him for a long moment. Rain ran down his leather vest, dripping from the edges of the patches. His hands were still shaking, maybe from adrenaline, maybe from fear for his wife. "You got anyone? Parents? A home?" he pressed. Evan swallowed, staring at the ground. "No." Miguel's jaw clenched. He didn't say anything for a moment. He just exhaled slowly and rubbed the back of his neck. "You hungry?" Evan didn't trust his voice to answer, so he nodded. Miguel motioned toward his bike. "Come on." Evan blinked. "What?" "On that." Miguel almost smirked. "Yeah, on that." I've never." Miguel crouched slightly so he could look the boy in the eyes. "Kid, you saved my wife's life. You think I'm letting you spend another night freezing behind a grocery store?" The words didn't sound real. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Miguel jerked his chin toward the bike. "Let's go." Evan approached slowly, like he was stepping toward a wild animal. The bike steamed in the rain, chrome glistening under the streetlight. Miguel helped him climb onto the back, placing his small hands around the leather strap. "Hold tight," he said. Evan did. The engine roared to life, and the vibration shot through Evan's body. It was loud, powerful, nothing like anything he'd ever felt before. For a moment, just a moment, something warm fluttered in his chest. A feeling he hadn't felt since before he lost everything. Safety. Miguel eased the bike out of the alley, taking slow turns, careful of the boy on the back. The city lights blurred through the rain as they rode. Evan tightened his grip, not out of fear, but because it was the first time in years that he felt like he wasn't completely alone. After several minutes, the bike turned into a small diner parking lot. The neon sign flickered above the windows. "Mara's Midnight Grill." Miguel killed the engine and helped Evan down. Inside, the diner was warm, glowing with soft yellow lights. The smell of coffee and frying food washed over them. A waitress in her 50s looked up. "Miguel? Everything okay? You look like you rode through a hurricane." "Feels like it," he muttered. "Can we get a booth in the back?" She nodded, giving Evan a curious glance, but saying nothing. Miguel guided him to a booth and slid in across from him. Evan sat stiffly, dripping water on the vinyl seat. Miguel didn't speak at first. He just stared at the boy, his expression unreadable. Then he said quietly, "You could have died back there." Evan's throat tightened. He nodded slowly. "I know." Miguel leaned forward. "Then why did you do it?" Evan bit the inside of his cheek. Rainwater dripped from his hair onto the table. His voice was small, barely audible. "Because nobody helped me." Miguel blinked. Evan stared at the tabletop, fists clenched. When my mom got sick. When we lost our place. When she..." He swallowed hard. People walked past. They looked the other way. They didn't want to get involved. Miguel's expression softened in a way Evan didn't expect. "So I told myself," Evan whispered, "if someone needed help, I wouldn't look away." Silence settled between them. Miguel finally exhaled, long and slow. "You did more than most grown men would have done," he said. "You hear me? That took guts." Evan's face warmed with something he hadn't felt in a long time, validation. The waitress came by with a menu, but Miguel handed it back. "Get him whatever he wants," he said, "and make it a lot." She smiled gently at the boy and walked off. Evan stared at the table. "Nobody's ever bought me food before." Miguel raised an eyebrow. "Kid, after what you did tonight, you deserve more than a meal." Evan didn't understand what that meant. Not yet. But he would. Because this night, this simple decision to help, had put something in motion. Something far bigger than he knew. Miguel leaned back, eyes still fixed on him. "When we're done eating," he said softly, "I'm taking you somewhere." "Where?" Evan asked. Miguel's expression was serious, but his voice was gentle. "To meet the rest of the club." Ethan woke up the next morning feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Rested. He blinked up at the unfamiliar ceiling, the soft hum of a distant refrigerator filling the quiet. The blanket was still wrapped around him, warm, comforting, and smelling faintly of laundry soap. He sat up slowly, half expecting the scene to dissolve, half expecting someone to yell at him or shove him outside. But instead, nothing. Just peace. And for a boy who'd spent months sleeping behind dumpsters, in park tunnels, and under bridges, peace was as strange as luxury. He ran a hand through his messy hair and whispered to himself, "I'm still here." His voice cracked a little. He wasn't sure if he meant he was still in the house, or still alive in a world that felt like it had tried so many times to erase him. He stretched, swung his legs off the couch, and instantly froze when he heard faint footsteps approaching. He stood up quickly, instinctively on guard, like a kid ready to defend himself or bolt for the door. But when the kitchen doorway filled with a figure, it was Mia. Her hair was tied back in a loose bun, and she wore a slightly oversized hoodie and pajama pants. A gentle smile formed the moment she saw him. "Good morning, sweetheart. You slept well?" Ethan swallowed. Yeah? Sorry if I took up space, or..." "Ethan." Mia's smile softened even more. "You didn't take up anything. You were safe here. That's all I care about." Safe. That word hit him like an emotion he didn't know how to hold. His throat tightened. Mia walked into the kitchen and motioned for him to follow. "Come on. I made breakfast." Ethan hesitated. Not because he didn't want food, his empty stomach practically roared, but because he felt like he didn't deserve it. "Mia, I don't have money to pay you back," he said quietly. She paused, then turned around slowly, her expression calm but steady. "Did I ask you for any?" He shook his head. "Then come eat, sweet boy." He followed her into the kitchen where a plate of scrambled eggs, toast, and sliced fruit was waiting. Fresh steam rose from a cup of hot chocolate, too, something he hadn't tasted since before his mother died. His chest tightened so much he thought it might collapse. "No one's made me breakfast since." He stopped himself, eyes suddenly stinging. Mia placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "Since when, honey?" He looked down. "Since my mom." She didn't say anything right away. Instead, she wrapped her arms around him from the side. A quiet, warm hug, not overwhelming, not too tight. Just enough to tell him he wasn't invisible. "I'm glad you're here," she murmured. "Now sit. Eat." He did, and every bite felt like a memory he'd forgotten he was allowed to have. Halfway through the meal, heavy footsteps and the faint jingle of keys came from the hallway. Ethan froze again, but this time not out of fear. It was something else. Nervousness. Uncertainty. Wondering whether he was still welcome. The doorway filled with a tall figure. Ghost. He looked freshly showered, wearing a worn leather vest over a gray t-shirt. Tattoos traced both arms, and his beard was still damp. He stopped when he saw Ethan at the table. Ethan lowered his fork. "Good morning, sir." Ghost stared at him for a moment, then walked over and ruffled his hair in a surprisingly gentle gesture. "Mornin', kid," he grumbled. "Glad to see you didn't sneak out like a stray cat." Ethan blinked, then actually laughed softly. I wasn't planning to." "Good," Ghost replied. "Eat up. We got things to do today." Ethan straightened a little. "What kind of things?" Ghost smirked. "Don't worry. Nothing bad." Mia shot Ghost a knowing look over her shoulder. "Nothing dangerous either." "Right." Ghost gave a half shrug. Define dangerous. Mia raised her eyebrows sharply. Ghost cleared his throat. Fine, fine, nothing dangerous. Ethan watched this back and forth with a strange feeling blooming in his chest. It was like they were a family, a real one, teasing, protecting, talking like people who cared about each other. And for a moment, he let himself imagine what it would be like if he belonged here. After breakfast, Ghost grabbed his jacket and motioned for Ethan. Come with me, kid. I want to show you something. Ethan followed him out to the driveway, where bikes lined up like metal beasts sleeping under the morning sun. Ghost stopped beside his own, sleek black paint, chrome that glinted sharply, and a roaring silhouette that looked like it could outrun the wind. You ever ridden on a bike before? Ghost asked. Ethan shook his head quickly. No, sir. Ghost patted the back seat. Well, today's the day. Ethan's eyes widened. Really? Ghost nodded. Really? But first, he held out a helmet. Safety. Ethan took it in both hands as if it were some sacred object. It wasn't shiny or new. It was a little scratched, a little dented in places, but to Ethan, it was perfect, because it meant someone trusted him enough to put him on the back of a motorcycle. He slipped it on. It wobbled a bit. I think it's too big. Ghost chuckled. That's 'cause your head's the size of a damn lemon. Don't worry, I'll adjust the straps. Ghost knelt, tightening the helmet with surprising patience. There. Better. Yeah, Ethan whispered. Thank you. Ghost climbed onto the bike, started the engine, and the thunderous roar shook the pavement. Ethan's heart raced. Fear, excitement, all mixing into something electric. Hop on, kid. Ethan climbed onto the seat behind him and cautiously placed his hands on Ghost's back. Nope, Ghost said firmly. Arms around my waist. Tight. Don't let go. Ethan wrapped his arms around him. Ghost nodded. Good. Now hang on. They pulled out onto the road, wind whipping past Ethan's face, the vibration of the bike buzzing through his chest. For the first time in forever, Ethan didn't feel like he was running from something. He felt like he was flying towards something. Ghost didn't speed or do anything reckless. He just drove, steady, smooth, letting the boy feel the freedom of the open road. Birds scattered over fields, sunlight bounced off rooftops, cars blurred into streaks beside them. Ethan felt alive. After a while, they slowed near an old parking lot. Ghost parked and motioned for Ethan to follow him across the broken asphalt. This place, Ghost said, kicking at a loose chunk of pavement, used to be a playground. Before the city stopped giving a damn. Ethan looked around at the empty space. What happened to it? Neglect, Ghost said simply. World's full of it. But sometimes we take things back. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket. A map, hand-drawn. Ethan peered over his arm. What's that? Ghost crouched and spread it on the ground. A plan. Something me and the guys are working on. Ethan bent down beside him. For what? Ghost tapped the paper. For you, kid. And kids like you. Ethan's breath caught. He didn't understand fully, but he felt something shift. A seed of purpose. A hint of hope. A sense that his life was quietly changing, piece by piece, in ways he couldn't yet name. Ghost looked at him seriously. You're not alone anymore, Ethan. You hear me? Not ever again. Ethan blinked hard, his voice cracking. Yes, sir. A tear rolled down his cheek. But this time, it wasn't from fear. It was from finally being seen. The wind still clung to Ethan's clothes as he and Ghost walked back toward the motorcycle. Ghost folded the map and tucked it into his vest, his boots crunching on gravel. Ethan's mind buzzed with questions, excitement, and a strange warmth that almost scared him. He had never experienced a morning like this, not even in the distant memories before everything fell apart. Ghost swung a leg over the bike. Hop on, he said. We're heading somewhere else. Ethan grabbed the helmet again, slipped it over his head, and climbed onto the back seat. When the engine roared back to life, Ethan held tighter than before, not out of fear, but out of trust. They rode through the outskirts of town until the concrete faded into open land. Old farm fences, tall grass swaying like waves, and the distant outlines of rusted barns dotted the landscape. Ethan watched everything with wide eyes, absorbing details like someone who had spent too long in cities, alleys, and shadows. After a while, Ghost turned onto a dirt road lined with trees. "We're almost there," he shouted over the engine. "Where?" Ethan called back. Ghost didn't answer. Instead, he slowed the bike as they approached a clearing where a camp had been set up. Tables, toolboxes, tarps, and a few bikes resting on kickstands. Smoke curled from a small fire pit. People were laughing, clanking metal, arguing, teasing. Voices rose and echoed like a small community that had carved its own world out of the wilderness. Ethan recognized the jackets before he recognized the faces. The Hells Angels. His breath hitched. He squeezed Ghost's waist a little tighter. "Hey," Ghost said, noticing. He adjusted the throttle and leaned just enough for Ethan to hear him clearly. "You're safe, kid. I wouldn't bring you anywhere you ain't." Ethan exhaled slowly and nodded. When Ghost parked, several bikers turned toward them. A tall, broad man with a silver beard and sunglasses resting on his head grinned. "Look who finally decided to show up." And he brought the little hero with him. Ethan stiffened. Hero? Why was he calling him? Ghost cut him a glance that said, "Don't worry about it." The silver-bearded biker, known as Bear, walked up and offered Ethan a fist bump. Ethan hesitated, then tapped his knuckles against Bear's. "Good to see you again, kid," Bear said warmly. "Mia told us you slept like a log." Ethan felt his cheeks heat. "Oh yeah? I was really tired." "Well, sleep is good," Bear chuckled. "Especially for someone who's been through more than any kid should." Ethan glanced at Ghost. Ghost gave him the faintest nod, permission to breathe, to exist, to not shrink into himself. More bikers came over. A woman with braided hair and gloves still on from fixing an engine winked at him. A tall man covered in tattoos offered him a soda. Someone else offered him a chair near the fire. And Ethan didn't know how to take any of it. He wasn't used to being welcomed. He wasn't used to being seen without someone wanting something from him. Money, labor, silence. But these people didn't want anything. They were simply kind. A soft voice broke through his thoughts. "Hey, Ethan." He turned to see Maya, one of the only women in the chapter who wasn't covered in grease or tattoos. She wore jeans, a leather jacket, and a warm smile. Ethan remembered meeting her very briefly the night before, but the details were blurry because everything had felt overwhelming. Maya crouched beside him. "I heard you like to draw." Ethan blinked. "You heard that?" Ghost mentioned it. Ghost stiffened a little. "I didn't mention it. Mia did." Maya smirked. "Well, then Mia mentioned it." Ethan's brows furrowed. "It's just doodles. They're not good or anything." Maya shook her head. "Art doesn't have to be good. It just has to be yours." She handed him a small sketchbook. New, blank, and smelling like untouched paper. Ethan stared at it. "Is this for me? Who else would it be for?" Maya tapped the cover. "Go on. Try it." Ethan opened it slowly. The first page gleamed white and perfect. He didn't draw on it yet. The shock of receiving something brand new, something his, was too much to process. He closed it gently and held it close to his chest. "Thank you," he whispered. Maya patted his shoulder and stood. "You're welcome." As the bikers worked, laughed, and argued around him, Ethan felt a quiet energy rise inside him. Not anxiety, something else. A feeling that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't invisible. He took a seat on a log near the fire. Ghost sat beside him, chewing on a toothpick. observing the chaos like a father watching unruly teenagers. "What is this place?" Ethan asked softly. Ghost shrugged. "A meet-up spot. A place to fix bikes, talk, get away from the world. Everyone needs one. You come here a lot?" "Sometimes. Depends on how loud the world gets." Ethan nodded slowly. "It gets loud for me, too." Ghost glanced down at him with something like understanding. "Yeah, I figured." They stayed like that for a while, watching the others rebuild a bike engine, argue about tools, laugh at inside jokes. For the first time, Ethan realized that bikers, rough, tattooed, loud bikers, weren't anything like the stories people whispered. They weren't criminals or bullies. They were a family, and somehow, Ethan was sitting in the middle of them. After a bit, Bear clapped his hands loudly. "All right, listen up. Lunch break. Someone help me find where the hell I put the grill." Someone shouted from across the clearing. "It's behind your bike, old man." "Say that again, and you're cleaning it," Bear retorted. The group split into teams, some grabbing food, some setting up benches, others dragging out coolers. Ethan moved to stand, unsure if he should help or just stay out of the way. Ghost nudged him. "Go on. Help 'em out. They ain't porcelain dolls. They won't break if you hand them a fork." Ethan nodded nervously and walked toward the group. Bear handed him a stack of paper plates. "You mind setting these by the table, bud? We're about to grill enough food to feed a small army." "Sure," Ethan said, taking the plates. As he set them down, a few other bikers gave him smiles or thumbs-ups. He felt something warm bloom in his chest. Purpose, belonging, a place where he wasn't treated like a burden. He didn't know how to describe it, but he knew he liked it. Ghost watched him from across the clearing, arms crossed, a faint smile tugging at the edge of his mouth. For a man known as Ghost, cold, quiet, intimidating, that smile was rare. But Ethan didn't see it. He was too busy laughing for the first time in a long time as a biker named Torque pretended to drop a huge bag of marshmallows on his foot. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the trees, catching Ethan's hair, reflecting off smiling faces, filling the air with warmth. For a few hours, Ethan forgot what loneliness felt like. For a few hours, he simply existed in a place where people cared. And for a boy who'd been living in shadows, this light felt like a miracle he never expected. By late afternoon, the camp had settled into a rhythm. Engines humming, tools clinking, laughter echoing through the clearing. Ethan had never seen adults work like this before, rough and loud. Yes, but also strangely joyful. They joked while fixing engines, teased each other about who used the wrong wrench, argued over nothing, then laughed it off. It felt normal, a kind of normal he'd never had. Ethan stood near the grill where Bear was flipping burgers the size of dinner plates. Smoke curled into the air, carrying the smell of sizzling meat. Bear glanced down at him. "You eat beef, right?" he asked. Ethan nodded quickly. "Yeah, yes. Whatever is okay." Bear chuckled. "Kid, you don't whatever around here. You eat properly. Your skin and bones." He slid a perfectly cooked burger onto a bun and handed it to Ethan. "Eat." Ethan held it like it was fragile. "Thank you." He took a small bite at first, then a big one. Then he had to stop because his eyes unexpectedly burned. The burger tasted like warmth, like safety, like something a parent might make for you because they care whether you're hungry. He wiped his nose discreetly. Bear pretended not to see, but his eyes softened. Ghost walked over, hands tucked in his vest pockets. "Good." Ethan nodded, cheeks full. "Really good." Ghost tapped his shoulder. "Come with me. Want to show you something." Ethan followed him across the camp, past scattered parts and parked bikes, toward a long wooden table where a few bikers were sharpening tools. Ghost stopped at the far end where a small group stood around a tarp-covered object. When they stepped aside, Ethan froze. Under the tarp was a bike, but not like the big roaring machines the bikers rode. This one was smaller, not a child's toy, not fully built, but somewhere between. A frame, clean and polished. Handlebars wrapped in leather. A small engine that looked restored but missing pieces. It was halfway to becoming something special. Ethan stared at it, speechless. Ghost rested a hand on the frame. This was mine. My first build. I started it when I was about your age. Never finished it. Ethan swallowed. It's amazing. Ghost nodded once. It needs work. A lot of it. But it's solid. And I thought, maybe you'd want to help rebuild it. Ethan blinked fast. Me? Ghost looked him right in the eyes. Yeah, you. Ethan stepped closer, his fingers trembling as he lightly touched the cool metal. I don't know anything about engines. Or tools. Or anything. That's the point, Ghost said. You learn. He nudged him gently. Nobody's born knowing things. You think Bear popped out of the womb flipping burgers and fixing carburetors? Hell no. He learned. Same way I learned. Same way everyone here learned. One of the other bikers, Hammer, chimed in. Kid, I didn't know the difference between a bolt and a screw until I was 20. That's not something to brag about. Torque called from behind them. Whatever, Hammer muttered. Ethan laughed quietly. The sound surprised even him. Ghost crouched beside the bike. Look, Ethan, this ain't about the bike. Not really. It's about giving your hands something to do. Giving your mind something to build instead of something to fear. He tapped the frame lightly. This is yours to help shape, if you want it. Ethan looked up at him, eyes wide. Why would you give this to me? Ghost didn't hesitate. Because someone once gave me a place to stand. A place to be. I figure it's my turn to do the same. Ethan's throat tightened painfully. No one had ever offered him something like this. Something meaningful, something patient, something hopeful. Do you want to try? Ghost asked gently. Ethan nodded. Yeah, I really do. Ghost smiled, small but real. Good. Then let's start simple. He walked Ethan around the bike, pointing out each component. This is the frame. Strong as hell. Won't quit on you. This is the tank. Don't touch anything sharp. These are the mounts, the forks, the suspension. Ethan listened like every word mattered. Ghost handed him a soft cloth. First job? Clean the frame. Easy. Careful. Slow. Ethan wiped the metal with surprising seriousness, as if afraid he might ruin it. Ghost corrected his grip gently, showed him how to move the cloth in circles, how to handle the corners. For the first time ever, Ethan felt capable. Not helpless. Not invisible. Capable. As he worked, Maya walked over carrying 2 lemonades. She handed them to Ethan and Ghost. How's the apprentice doing? Ethan looked up shyly. Learning. Ghost smirked. He's doing good. Torque shouted from across the camp. Can he teach you how to use a wrench, Ghost? Ghost didn't even look back. Say that again, and you're walking home. Laughter echoed. Ethan kept wiping the frame, each stroke steadying something deep inside him. After a while, Ghost crouched down again. Hey. He tapped Ethan's shoulder. Take a break. Ethan stepped back, wiping his hands on his pants. Did I do it wrong? No, Ghost tapped the frame proudly. You did it right. Now come eat before Bear gives your burger to someone else. Ethan followed him back to the campfire. The sun was dipping lower, painting the clearing in warm oranges and golds. The bikers were sitting in loose circles, passing around food, telling stories so exaggerated they could only be lies, but the fun kind of lies everyone knew were fake. Ghost took a seat on a log. Ethan sat beside him. For a moment, neither spoke. The fire crackled softly. A breeze rustled the leaves above them. Somewhere, Bear was joking that he could wrestle a bear and win. Torque loudly disagreed. Ethan looked down at his hands. They were covered in a bit of grease. They felt warm, alive, useful. Ghost noticed him staring. You all right? Ethan nodded slowly. Yeah, I. I think I am. Ghost leaned back, eyes on the flames. Good. You deserve that. Ethan swallowed hard, overwhelmed by the softness in his voice. The honesty, the simple belief. For a boy who had been alone for so long, Ghost's presence felt like a shelter he didn't know he needed. And maybe, just maybe, this was the first time in his life he wasn't surviving. He was living. Evening settled slowly over the clearing, dimming the sky into soft purples and bruised blues. The smell of roasted meat lingered in the air, blending with smoke from the fire pit and the oily scent of machine work. Ethan sat close to the flames, absorbing every tiny moment as if he were afraid they'd dissolve if he blinked too long. For so many years, life had been a series of cold nights, strange alleys, unfamiliar shelters, and whispered questions. What now? Where do I go? Who will help me? But tonight felt different. Tonight, he wasn't just a kid trying to disappear in the world's shadows. He was part of a circle, warm, loud, messy, imperfect, and alive. Ghost sat a few feet away on a folding chair, his boots planted firmly in the dirt. Across from him, Bear was telling the kind of story only older bikers tell. Dramatic, exaggerated, full of unnecessary gestures. The others interjected with the usual mix of disbelief and teasing. And I'm telling you, the thing was taller than me, Bear said, waving his hands to demonstrate. Torque rolled his eyes. You were just looking at your reflection in a window, old man. Bear pointed dramatically. Say that again, and I'm hiding all your spare gas cans. Everyone erupted into laughter. Ethan couldn't help smiling. The sound of grown men joking like children was oddly comforting. He pulled out the sketchbook Maya had given him earlier in the day. The first blank page still intimidated him, but he opened to it anyway, pencil in hand. As he listened to the chatter around him, his hand began moving almost on its own. Soft lines, slow strokes, familiar shapes. He wasn't sure what he was drawing at first, but then the image emerged. A motorcycle. Ghost's motorcycle. The shape of the handles he had held onto, the smooth curve of the tank, the glinting chrome. He sketched it the way it felt. Powerful, steady, a silent protector of its rider. Maya walked over, quiet as a whisper, and sat beside him. Can I see? Ethan hesitated only a second before turning the book toward her. She exhaled softly. Wow, Ethan, this is really good. His cheeks warmed. It's just, I don't know. I was just drawing what I remember. That's what art is, Maya said, turning memory into something real. As she admired the drawing, Ethan nervously glanced across the fire. Ghost's eyes were already on him, though relaxed, unreadable behind the firelight. When Ghost realized Ethan had noticed him looking, he simply tipped his chin, a silent approval, a small gesture that somehow meant more than words. Ethan smiled shyly and lowered his gaze back to the sketchbook. Maya nudged him gently. You know, drawing can be a way of healing, a way of telling your story. Ethan's throat tightened. I don't know if my story matters. Maya's expression softened. Everything you survived matters. Everything you felt matters. And everything you're learning to feel now matters even more. Ethan swallowed hard, turning the page so she wouldn't see the tears threatening to surface. Maya squeezed his shoulder, then stood and walked toward the campfire to help the others clean up. The fire crackled. Shadows danced. A few more bikes rumbled into the clearing, riders returning from an errand. They nodded at Ethan as they passed, like they already knew him, like he belonged here. Ghost finally stood and walked over to him, his boots crunching softly in the dirt. You did that? He asked, glancing at the drawing. Ethan nodded. Ghost's voice was low. You got an eye for detail. Ethan shrugged, embarrassed. It's just a sketch. No, Ghost said firmly. It's talent. Ethan's ears burned. He didn't know how to accept compliments, not when he had grown up hearing only the opposite. Ghost sat beside him on the log. You know, bikes are like art, too. Every piece matters. Every bolt. Every line. You put something of yourself into it. Ethan looked up at him. Do you still build bikes? Ghost stared into the fire. Not as much these days. Why not? Ghost's jaw tensed for a moment. Life gets complicated. Then he relaxed again. But maybe working on that old one with you. Maybe that's what I need, too. Ethan felt something shift in his chest. A connection. A bridge between two people who had been alone for different reasons. Ghost? He asked softly. Yeah. Why did you help me that night? When I was running. Ghost didn't answer immediately. He rubbed a thumb along the worn edge of his leather vest, thinking. Finally, he said, because you looked like someone who deserved a break. And I know what it's like to need one. Ethan blinked. Did someone help you once? Ghost nodded. Yeah. Someone who didn't know me a damn thing. But he saw something in me, and he didn't let me fall. Ethan lowered his gaze. I don't know what anyone sees in me. Ghost leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. I see a kid who survived things most people never could. I see someone with guts. Someone with heart. Someone who's still standing when life tried to bury him. Ethan's eyes stung. I'm not strong. Ghost looked at him, steady and unflinching. Kid, strength isn't about muscles. It's about surviving days that break grown men. And you've done more of that than most people your age. The words hit Ethan like a gentle storm, overwhelming, but needed. He wiped his cheeks quickly, hoping Ghost didn't notice. Ghost noticed, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he tapped Ethan's shoulder lightly. Come on, I want to show you something else. They stood and walked a little away from the fire, toward a cluster of trees where the noise of the camp grew softer. Ghost pointed at the sky between the branches. Look! Ethan tilted his chin upward. The stars were beginning to appear, scattered at first, then multiplying, glittering in the deepening indigo sky. Ethan's breath caught. It's beautiful. Ghost nodded. When I was your age, I used to stare at the sky whenever things got rough. Reminded me that the world was bigger than whatever I was scared of. Ethan held still, letting the quiet wrap around them. The night felt endless, peaceful, and open, unlike anything he was used to. Do you still look at the stars now? Ethan asked softly. Sometimes, Ghost said. When I remember to. Ethan smiled faintly. I think I'll do that too. Ghost placed a steady hand on his shoulder. Good. They stood there for a long moment, side by side, saying nothing. And in that silence, Ethan felt a peace he had never known. A peace that didn't demand anything of him. A peace that didn't disappear when he breathed. When they walked back toward the fire, Ethan realized something he hadn't understood until now. He wasn't just visiting. He wasn't just tagging along. He was becoming part of something. Not because he owed them anything. Not because he was useful. But because they wanted him there. And for a boy who had spent his whole life unwanted, this new feeling, this belonging, was both terrifying and beautiful. The hospital lights flickered softly across the linoleum floor as the night shift settled in, a quiet hum rolling through the corridor. Cole stood at the doorway of the room where his wife, Amber, lay resting. The emergency had shaken her, enough that she still breathed with a slight tremor, like her body was replaying everything in fragments she couldn't quite put down. And sitting beside her, curled up in the stiff vinyl chair with a blanket the nurses had given him, was Noah, the homeless boy who had stepped in, who had acted quicker than anyone had expected, who had practically saved Amber's life before Cole had even reached the scene. Cole didn't speak at first. He just watched the boy. Noah's head was tilted slightly forward, his chin resting near his collarbone, breath slow and even. For someone who lived with danger every day on the streets, he slept light. Yet tonight, after everything, He'd finally given in to exhaustion. Cole stepped inside quietly, letting the door whisper shut behind him. He pulled the chair closer to Amber's bedside, rubbing a hand across his face. His knuckles were still scraped from earlier, when he'd nearly put someone through a wall for trying to take advantage of a panicked moment. The memory made the muscles in his jaw clench. Amber stirred. Cole. He leaned forward immediately. Hey, I'm here. Her eyes fluttered open. She was pale, but not as shaky as before. Is no okay? Cole nodded. He's right here. Passed out. Kid held strong until you were stable. He paused, glancing at the boy again. We owe him more than we can ever repay. Amber's lips curved into the smallest, tired smile. That's what I was thinking. For a moment, the room was quiet again. One of those still spaces where you could feel gratitude settle in the air. Cole gently brushed a strand of hair away from Amber's forehead. You scared the life out of me. His voice cracked even as he tried to keep it steady. I thought. He swallowed the rest because saying it would make it too real. Amber reached for his hand, gripping it weakly but firmly. I'm okay. Because of him. Her gaze drifted to Noah again. Cole. He didn't hesitate for a second. Cole nodded slowly. Yeah, he's tougher than most grown men. He sat back, running a thumb along her knuckles. Then, almost reluctantly, he said what he'd been thinking since the chaos started. Amber, there's something you need to know about Noah. She blinked. What? Cole exhaled. He's been on the streets a long time. No foster home stuck. Trouble seems to follow him, or he goes looking for it trying to protect someone else. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. He's got nobody. Not a single soul. Amber watched him carefully, as if she already sensed where this was going. Cole, I'm not saying this because he saved you. Cole continued before she could fill the silence. I'm saying it because I've watched that kid for months. He hangs around the outskirts of town, keeps away from trouble unless someone else is in danger. He's smart, he's loyal, and he deserves more than cardboard shelters and cold nights. Amber's eyes softened. You think we should help him? Cole shrugged. We already have, but I'm thinking something deeper. He looked again at the sleeping boy. Everyone needs someone in their corner. Amber looked at Noah for a long moment. Quietly, she whispered, he can stay with us. If he wants. Cole's head snapped up, eyes wide. Not because he didn't expect compassion from Amber, but because she had spoken the very thing sitting heavy in his chest. You're sure? Amber smiled gently. Cole, that boy risked everything today. And from what you're telling me, he's been risking everything for others his whole life. We can't fix the world, but maybe we can fix his. A breath he didn't realize he'd been holding eased out of Cole's lungs. He leaned forward and kissed her forehead softly. I love you. I love you too, she murmured. A groggy mumble came from the side chair. Did I miss something? Cole turned toward Noah, who was rubbing his eyes with the back of his hand, blinking in confusion. Nah, kid. You're good. Amber smiled at him. How are you feeling? Warm. Hospital blankets are weird. Noah stretched stiffly, then winced as if remembering everything at once. Is your baby okay? Amber nodded. We're both fine. Thanks to you. Noah shifted, looking embarrassed. I just did what anyone should do. Cole and Amber exchanged a knowing glance, because most people wouldn't have. Not with the risks he took. Not with the way he'd put himself between Amber and danger without hesitation. Cole leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. Listen, kid. We've been talking. Noah straightened nervously. Am I in trouble? Amber laughed softly. No, sweetheart. Quite the opposite. Cole rubbed the back of his neck, easing into the moment carefully. How would you feel about staying with us for a while? Just until things get sorted. We've got space, food, a warm bed, no pressure. Noah froze, blinking, breathing shallow like someone had just offered him something impossible. You want me to come stay? At your house? Like inside? Amber nodded. Yes. Noah swallowed hard. But I don't want to be a burden. Or take up space. Or get in the way. People get tired of me fast. Cole leaned forward, voice firm in the way that wasn't angry, just steady. Honest. We don't get tired of people who've got good hearts. And you've got one of the best ones I've ever seen. Noah stared down at his hands. They were trembling. Nobody's ever asked me to stay before. Amber's eyes glistened. Well, we are. For a long moment, Noah didn't speak. Then he nodded. Once, small, but certain. Okay, he whispered. I'd like that. Cole stood up and squeezed the boy's shoulder gently. Then it settled. Noah looked at Amber again. Are you really okay? Amber reached out her hand. Noah hesitated before placing his in hers. I am now. Cole turned toward the window. The night beyond was still, quiet, peaceful. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Maybe challenges. Maybe adjustments. Maybe something bigger than all of them. But he knew one thing for sure. Their family had just gotten bigger. And for the first time in a long, long while, Noah had a place to belong. The sun hadn't even fully risen when Cole guided the bike into the narrow driveway of their small house at the edge of town. The sky was streaked with soft orange and deep blue, the kind of early morning light that made everything look gentler, calmer. Noah sat behind him, not tightly gripping like someone scared, but holding on with a strange confidence, like he felt safe for the first time in a long while. Amber, still resting at the hospital overnight for observation, had insisted that Cole take Noah home, get him cleaned up, get him fed, let him breathe. She'd smiled when she said it, even though she was pale, even though she was tired. She's tough? Cole said over his shoulder as he cut the engine. Noah nodded quietly. She smiled at me when I checked her temperature with the nurse. Most grown-ups never smile at me. Cole gave a quiet huff. Half a laugh, half something heavier. That's because most grown-ups don't know what to do with a kid who doesn't have someone vouching for him. He unbuckled his helmet. Well, you've got me now. Noah didn't speak, but something shifted in his eyes, something small, something warm. They hopped off the bike, and Noah stood there for a moment, staring at the house. It wasn't big. It wasn't fancy, but it had a garden out front, a wind chime on the porch, and curtains Amber had sewn herself out of fabric she found at a thrift shop. To Noah, it might as well have been a castle. Cole walked up the steps, keys in hand. Come on, kid. Let's get you inside. Noah followed, but carefully, like he didn't want to make too much noise or leave a mark anywhere. Cole noticed. He didn't say anything yet. Inside, the warmth hit instantly. A home smelled different than the streets, different than shelters or abandoned buildings. It had that mix of laundry detergent, coffee, and faint lavender from Amber's cleaning sprays. Noah froze at the entrance, like stepping further might make the whole place disappear. Cole kicked off his boots. You can take your shoes off if you want. Or leave them. Doesn't matter. Noah slowly untied them and placed them neatly by the door. Good, Cole said, nodding. He pointed to the couch. Sit. I'll get you something. Noah didn't sit. Not at first. He stood there, looking at everything like it was too fragile to touch. Kid, Cole said gently, you're not going to break anything. It's a house, not a museum. That got a small smile out of Noah. He moved to the couch and sat down, stiff at first. Then he slowly relaxed into the cushions. Cole walked into the kitchen and opened the fridge. There wasn't much, some leftovers, old takeout containers, eggs, and Amber's almond milk. But there were also 2 plates wrapped in foil with a sticky note on top in Amber's handwriting. For Noah. Heat this up. Cole shook his head, smiling softly. Even from a hospital bed, she was thinking about the boy. He warmed up the food, pasta, steamed veggies, half a chicken breast, and brought it out with a glass of water. Noah stared. That's for me? Yeah, Cole said. Dig in. Noah held the fork awkwardly at first. Perfect example of someone who'd eaten standing up behind dumpsters more times than at tables. But once he tasted the food, everything else faded. He ate slowly, trying not to look like he was starving even though he clearly was. You don't have to ration it, Cole said. There's more. Noah blinked. I'm not used to eating in front of people. You'll get used to it. They both sat in silence for a while, the kind of silence that wasn't uncomfortable, just new. When Noah finished, he slid the plate back gently. Thank you. You're welcome. Now come on. Cole stood. Let me show you where you'll stay. Noah followed him down the short hall as Cole pushed open a small bedroom door. It wasn't anything extravagant, just a bed, a dresser, a lamp, and some posters of old motorcycle races that Cole had put up years ago. Noah froze again. This is mine. If you want it, Cole said simply. The boy stepped inside. His fingers brushed the edge of the bed like he expected the fabric to vanish. He lifted the pillow, set it down, touched the dresser, the window frame, the blanket folded at the foot of the bed. Then he sat down, slowly, carefully, like he wasn't sure the bed would hold his weight. And then, he sank into it, exhaling a soft sound he hadn't meant to let out. You okay? Cole asked. Noah nodded quickly. Yeah, I'm good. I've never had a room. Not just a room. A room that's mine. Cole leaned against the door frame. Well, you do now. Noah swallowed hard. What if you change your mind? I won't, Cole said without hesitation. Amber won't. And you don't have to prove anything. You've done enough. Noah looked down at his hands. I don't know how to live in a house. Cole chuckled softly. Then we'll teach you. Step by step. No rush. The boy nodded again, a little slower, a little calmer. Cole tapped the doorframe lightly. I'm gonna grab some stuff from the club later. Clothes, shoes, whatever else we find. You rest a bit. Noah looked up quickly. You're coming back, right? That hit harder than Cole expected. Kid, he said, voice gentler. I'm not leaving you alone in the world. Okay. Noah nodded, cheeks pink, eyes shiny but determined not to let tears fall. I'll stay here, Cole said. Don't worry. Noah eased back on the bed, pulling the blanket halfway across his legs. Okay. Cole turned off the overhead light, leaving only the warm glow of the bedside lamp. And for the first time in a long time, in a real bed, in a real home, Noah fell asleep without fear. Cole watched him for a moment before stepping out, closing the door halfway. Not all the way, not enough to make Noah feel shut in. Just enough to say, you're safe here. Tomorrow would bring new things, conversations, decisions, maybe even the involvement of the biker brothers who'd heard bits of what happened and were already restless with emotion. But tonight was simple. A boy had a bed, a home, and two people who cared. By the time morning sunlight spilled through the kitchen window, Cole had already been awake for an hour. Not because he couldn't sleep. He was used to rough nights, long rides, and worse hours. No, he was awake because he kept checking on Noah. Quietly, subtly, like the boy might disappear if he wasn't careful. Every time he peeked into the room, Noah was still there, curled under the blanket, breathing softly, like someone finally allowed to rest. Cole poured coffee into a chipped mug and leaned against the counter, staring at nothing in particular. His world had changed so quickly. First the emergency with Amber, then the homeless kid who'd rushed toward danger without hesitation, then the realization that this boy, this quiet, fragile, brave kid, had nobody. Nobody but them. He took a sip, exhaled slowly, and then his phone buzzed across the counter. He checked the screen. Brother's asking about the kid. Heard some things. Need update. Riggs. Then another. Everything good? Need us to ride. Stone. And another. Cole, what's going on? The boys are restless. Patches. Cole rubbed his forehead. He knew this was coming. Word traveled fast in the club, especially when a kid was involved. They weren't just bikers. They were fathers, uncles, brothers, men who'd lived enough life to know when something mattered. Before he could respond, he heard soft footsteps behind him. Noah stood in the doorway, messy hair, blanket still draped over his shoulders like a small cape. He blinked at the sunlight like he wasn't sure he was allowed to step into it. Cole softened immediately. "Morning, kid." "Morning." Noah's voice was scratchy from sleep. "I didn't mean to sleep so long." "You needed it," Cole said. "Hungry?" A shy nod. Cole pulled out a pan while Noah sat carefully at the kitchen table, trying not to take up too much space, as if he still wasn't convinced he belonged in the room. "You like scrambled eggs?" Cole asked. Noah shrugged. "I don't know." Cole turned slightly. "You've never had scrambled eggs?" The boy shook his head. "Not real ones." Cole paused only for a second. Then he kept cooking like it wasn't a big deal, even though it definitely was. "Well, today's the day you try them." Noah watched him quietly, like he was studying every movement, every sound of the pan, every crack of an egg, every sizzle. When Cole plated the food and set it in front of him, Noah hesitated. "Go on," Cole encouraged. Noah took a small bite. His eyes widened a little. "This is really good." Cole smirked. "I'm not a chef, but I can do breakfast." Noah ate slowly, savoring each bite like it might be his only good meal for a while. Cole noticed the habit. It would take time to unlearn. Halfway through his plate, Noah looked up. "Is Amber okay?" "Yeah," Cole said. "They're doing more tests today. I'll take you to see her." Noah nodded, relief washing over his face. Then the boy's expression shifted, slightly tense, slightly worried. What happens now?" Cole set his mug down. He'd expected that question. "Well," he started carefully, "you stay here for now. With us. We figure out what you need, what you want, and what you're comfortable with." Noah nodded, processing it. But Cole saw the deeper question in his eyes. "How long until you change your mind?" Before he could address it, loud engines thundered in the distance. Not one, not two, several. Noah stiffened instantly. The fork slipped from his hand. Cole stood, walked toward the window, and looked out. A line of Hell's Angels motorcycles rolled slowly down the street and stopped in front of the house. At least 8 of them, maybe more coming down the road. Leather vests, heavy boots, engines ticking hot. They weren't charging in. They weren't storming anything. They were just showing up. Because word had spread. And because when one of their own was involved in something big, the rest didn't sit still. Noah stood frozen. Did I do something wrong?" Cole turned to him, voice firm but soft. "No, kid. Not even close." "Then why are they here?" Cole knelt, so he was eye level. "They're here because they heard about what you did. You helped Amber. You helped me. And you did it with no reason except doing what was right. That means something." Noah swallowed hard. "Are they mad?" Cole shook his head. "No. They're worried. They want to make sure you're okay." The engines cut off outside, one by one, leaving a heavy silence behind them. A knock hit the door, loud, but familiar. Cole sighed. "You ready?" Noah didn't know if he was, but he nodded anyway. Cole opened the door. Riggs stood on the porch, tall, broad, beard braided with metal rings. Behind him, the rest of the brothers waited, serious but not intimidating. Not on purpose, at least. Riggs crossed his arms. "You gonna invite us in? Or are we standing out here like delivery men?" Cole stepped aside. One by one, the brothers entered, quietly, respectfully, filling the house without overwhelming it. Their presence was heavy, not hostile. Noah stood behind the table like a deer caught in headlights. Riggs noticed him first. "So you're Noah," he said gently. Noah nodded quickly. "You look smaller than," Cole said. Stone chimed in. That's 'cause Cole's a terrible storyteller. A few chuckles broke the tension. Patches stepped forward, kneeling slightly so he didn't tower over Noah. We heard what you did, kid. That takes guts. Noah's voice barely rose above a whisper. I just wanted to help. Most people run the other direction, Patches said. You didn't. Noah didn't know what to say. Cole stood behind him like a guardian. He's staying with us. Riggs nodded. Good. That's where he belongs. Then Noah did something small, something tiny, but something the men noticed immediately. He moved closer to Cole. Just an inch. Maybe less. But enough to show who he trusted. Riggs softened. We're not here to scare you, kid. We're family. Cole's family. Amber's family. That means your family, too. Noah blinked hard. Try not to cry. Stone tapped his helmet. We're gonna help you settle in. Whatever you need. Patches grinned. Also, Cole don't know how to shop for kids. We'll fix that. A few laughs rolled through the house. And Noah just stood there, overwhelmed, confused, but for the first time in his life. Surrounded, not threatened. Seen, not ignored. Protected, not abandoned. Cole put a hand on his shoulder. Kid, he murmured, this is your family now. If you want it. Noah didn't speak. He didn't have to. The way he breathed, shaky, relieved, hopeful, said everything. The day felt strangely brighter than usual. Not because the sun was shining stronger, but because, for the first time in a long time, Noah walked outside with people who cared about him. Really cared. Riggs, Stone, Patches, and the rest of the Hell's Angels stood in the yard, chatting, adjusting their vests, tapping their boots against the gravel. Their bikes gleamed in the light, chrome flashing like mirrors. But their eyes? Most were on Noah. Not staring, watching, protecting, making sure he felt safe. Cole stepped out of the house with Noah at his side. He rested a hand lightly between the boy's shoulder blades, gentle, steady, guiding him forward. We're heading to the hospital, Cole said. Amber's asking for him. Riggs smirked. Woman's tougher than all of us combined. Stone nodded. Good thing this kid kept her steady long enough to get help. Otherwise, Cole shot him a warning look. Stone raised his hands. I know. No near-death talk around the kid. Noah clutched his sleeves nervously. He still wasn't used to being the center of attention. He wasn't used to people worrying about him at all. Cole knelt down so they were eye level. You okay? Noah nodded. Are all of them coming? Cole shook his head. Just me and one or two others. The rest are heading back to the clubhouse to get things ready. Ready for what? Noah asked. Cole smiled faintly. You'll see. Everything inside Noah wanted to ask again, to make sure he wasn't causing trouble, taking up too much space, being a burden. But then Riggs gave him a small nod, approval, reassurance, and Noah swallowed the words. They climbed into the truck while Patches and Stone mounted their bikes and rolled out behind them, acting as outriders, forming a protective escort as they drove toward the hospital. Noah watched them through the window, the engines roaring like a promise. The hospital was cold, bright, and quiet, too quiet. Cole led Noah down the hallway until they reached Amber's room. Before opening the door, he paused. Listen, he said softly, she's okay. Tired. But she's been asking for you. Noah blinked. For me? For you? Cole repeated. You saved her. Don't forget that. Noah's chest felt tight in a way he couldn't explain. Cole knocked lightly, then opened the door. Amber sat upright in the bed, pale but smiling. The moment she saw Noah, her eyes softened in a way that almost broke him. There you are, she breathed. My brave little hero. Noah froze. He wasn't used to being called anything except kid, boy, or worse. He stepped inside slowly. Cole moved to Amber's side, taking her hand. Noah stood at the foot of the bed, gripping the blanket of his too big hoodie, unsure what to do with his hands, his body, his whole existence. Amber tilted her head. Come here, sweetheart. Noah approached. She reached out, gently brushing his hair back from his forehead. You kept me awake. You kept me talking. You didn't leave me. You saved my life. Noah's throat tightened. I didn't know what to do. I just stayed. And that, Amber whispered, was everything. Noah bowed his head. I was scared. Amber smiled. So was I? But knowing you were there made me feel less alone. Something inside Noah cracked open. Something he didn't even know was still intact. Amber looked at Cole. Have you told him? Cole shook his head. Not yet. Told me what? Noah asked. Cole took a slow breath. There's something we want to offer you. Not because we feel sorry for you. Not because you helped us. But because we want you in our lives. Noah froze. Amber continued gently. We talked with social services. With the cops. With everyone who needed to be involved. Cole's voice softened. If you want, you can stay with us. Not just for a night. Not just for a few days. You can live with us. Noah blinked hard. His vision blurred. Like foster care? Something like that, Cole said. At least at first. But if things go well, we'd like to make it permanent. Amber squeezed Cole's hand. We want to give you a home, Noah. A real one. Noah's lips trembled. His hands shook. All you have to say is yes, Cole said. Noah looked between them. Amber smiling softly, Cole steady and solid. And then, finally, his voice cracked. I want that. Amber pulled him gently into a hug, careful not to disrupt her foreline. Cole wrapped an arm around both of them. For the first time in his life, Noah felt held, literally and figuratively, as if the world finally had a place carved out with his name on it. Later that afternoon, when they left the hospital together, Noah between them, one hand holding Cole's, one hand holding Amber's, they stepped outside to a sound that made Noah jump. Engines. Dozens. No, hundreds. The moment they reached the parking lot, Noah froze. The entire lot was filled with motorcycles. Rows and rows. A sea of chrome, leather, and red patches. Not threatening. Not angry. Waiting. For him. The noise built into a thunderous applause. Bikers revving their engines in salute. People had gathered around the edges of the lot, filming the moment, whispering, pointing. The Hells Angels stood tall and proud, their faces serious, respectful. Riggs stepped forward from the crowd. Stone. Patches. 10 more. 20 more. 50 more. They formed a line. A pathway. A ceremony. Cole put a hand on Noah's shoulder. They're here for you, kid. All of this. It's for you. Noah looked overwhelmed. But why? Riggs answered for everyone. Because heroes deserve to be honored. One by one, the bikers removed their helmets and held them against their chests. Amber leaned down. Go on, sweetheart. Noah took a small step forward. Then another. Then another. Before we end this story, I want to take a second to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this narration, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on the notifications so you never miss the next biker story, next twist, or next unbelievable real-life lesson. Also, drop a comment below and tell me where in the world you're watching from. I always love seeing the community come together. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next one. Every biker he passed gave him a nod, a silent acknowledgement, a sign of respect rarely given. By the time he reached the end of the line, his eyes were full of tears. Cole stepped up beside him. Noah, welcome to the family. The engines roared in unison, not as noise, not as chaos, but as a promise that he would never walk alone again.